You send your mix to get mastered by 4 different engineers. You're going to get 4 different results. So what's right and what's wrong? I want to help you understand the vocabulary, the different processes and techniques we use in achieving different sounding masters. To do that, I'm going to have one mix. I'm going to master it 4 different ways: warm, bright, loud, and punchy. We're going to take a listen to the results first, and then I'm going to show you how I achieved each of those sounds. Before we jump in, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like if you haven't already, and I want to thank the artist Leah for allowing me to use their most recently released song, I Guess I Like You Anyway. Now, let's jump into it.
Today, I can't get my feelings straight. On and we play games with each other. On and I guess I can't get enough. Driving alone tonight, without one thing on my mind. On and it's not easy for me to say, but I guess I like you anyway. I get around today, I can't get my feelings straight. On and we play games with each other. On and I guess I can't get enough. Driving alone tonight, without one thing on my mind. On and it's not easy for me to say, but I guess I like you anyway. I get around today, I can't get my feelings straight. On and we play games with each other. On and I guess I can't get enough. Driving alone tonight, without one thing on my mind. On and it's not easy for me to say, but I guess I like you anyway. I get around today, I can't get my feelings straight. On and we play games with each other. On and I guess I can't get enough. Driving alone tonight, without one thing on my mind. On and it's not easy for me to say, but I guess I like you anyway.
Warm, analog warmth. I hate the terminology because warmth is subjective to each individual, and I see it used as a sales tactic for snake oil. However, it's a part of the vernacular in the audio world we have to know how to navigate. So with that said, I want to bring something objective to a subjective term. What do we know about analog warmth? Well, it's been written before that warm sound has a tilt towards the bass frequencies. That's pretty general, but it's understandable. And the next thing is the warm character of analog gear, which a lot of people talk about, can be attributed to the non-linearities in the fidelity of analog equipment, be it at the speed at which a tape is played back or the width of those tracks, and also harmonics which are introduced by various transformers, capacitors, or tubes in a circuit within a hardware piece of gear. In a practical use case, subjectively warm masters are great for when I want the master to carry the weight of the mix across to the listener, the thickness, the fatness from 3 to 400 Hz and below, and typically it denotes a particular energy in the arrangement or production which needs that weight, needs that heaviness. So first, let's have a listen to this as it is, and we're going to make some observations. Let's have a listen.
Around today, I can't get my feelings straight. On and we play games with each other. On and I guess I can't get enough. Driving alone tonight, without one thing on my mind. On and it's not easy for me to say, but I guess I like you anyway. I get
Okay, how insane are those guitars? This is a solid mix. Carl Barner mixed it, and it's just really well balanced, good energy across the board. There's nothing inherently wrong with this mix. It's if we want a warmer tone, what are we going to do? Well, you can reach for an EQ and just dull the top end, but there's a lot of transient information up there which I like, and that's important. Now, there's a particular tool by Tone Projects, which is called Kelvin Tone Shaper, and this allows you to shape where the harmonics come in or are most affected. And I've got this preset I created, it's called Fatso Mark II, and it just focuses on bringing harmonics to the low end. And I'll show you this in Plugin Doctor. See, when I'm in the low frequencies here, 20 hertz, 24 hertz, 50 hertz. There's lots of second, third, fourth order harmonics. And then at the top end, there's not as many. A little bit more gets introduced to the top, but not as much, and it's not as thick and harmonically rich as it is in the low end. And the reason is because whenever I'm using harmonic saturation, a lot of saturators don't allow you to shape it like this, whereas with this particular plugin, we'll use it in high quality mode, will just give me harmonics mainly around that low frequency between 500 hertz and below, and that's where I really want to get that energy and weight to. So have a listen to this. I'm going to have the mix 100% dry, and then I'm going to slowly blend it in to where it's just thickening and juicing it up, and usually that's close to 100% actually with this one.
Around today, I can't get my feelings straight. On and we play games with each other. On and I guess I can't get enough. Driving alone tonight without one thing on my mind. On and it's not easy for me to say, but I guess I like you anyway. I get around today, I can't get my feelings straight. On and we play games with each other. On and I guess I can't get enough.
The weight in those guitars, it just has so much more to it. There's something else I'm hearing here, which for the warmth, remember the warmth isn't just generally the tone, it's also the energy which I'm hearing from the instruments there. And one instrument which has quite a bit of low end energy, which we can use to emphasize a more warmer and rounder and fuller tone, is actually the snare drum, which we might actually end up leveraging when we do the Punchy master as well. But if we look where that fundamental the snare drum is, it's right in the low mids and it carries a good smack and weight to it. If we can exacerbate that a little bit, or just make it a little bit more pronounced, it'll also help give this track an overall warmer balance, and it'll sort of tilt that frequency balance in favor of those lower frequencies. It's about 175 hertz. Now, I'm just thinking, I'm going to do that on the EQ6S because I want to make that boost and then compress it afterwards, because I got about 160 hertz boost I can do there. So let me just quickly gain stage this. So I can go into my analog gear, because I really want to use that as a basis to thicken this up. Okay, now let's have a listen to this snare in and out. So it's currently in, and then I'll, on the screen, let you know when I'm flicking it out.
Around today, I can't get my feelings straight. On and we play games with each other. On and I guess I can't get enough. Driving alone tonight without one thing on my mind. On and it's not.
That's pretty cool, that sound. Let's have a listen to this, to the before version, just quickly. Because that's actually driving right through those converters pretty hot. Let's just tone it down a bit there.
Around today, I can't get my feelings straight. On and we play games with each other. On and I guess I can't get enough.
It's a bit too woolly. I like the warmth, I like that sort of energy, but it's a bit too, just blowing too much there. Let's have another listen now.
Around today, I can't get my feelings straight. On and we play games with each other. On and I guess I can't get enough. Driving alone tonight without one thing on my mind. On and it's not easy for me to say, but I guess I like you anyway. I get around today, I can't get my feelings straight. On and we play games with each other. On and I guess I can't get enough. Driving alone tonight without one thing on my mind.
Alright, let's level match that quickly.
Driving alone tonight. 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 Driving alone tonight.
Yeah, okay, so level match now. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to go there. I'm going to bring that down again to level match because I just put an extra 2 decibels again into the converters on the calibration. Let's have another listen.
On and we play games with each other. On and I guess I can't get enough. Driving alone tonight without her. On and we play games with each other.
Now, I'm liking the tone because there's a good energy in the bottom, but everything is about balance and taste. And that warmth in the transients, that warmth in the low mids is great, what I'm getting. And I don't necessarily want to boost the top end to balance that out. I sort of want to lean a little bit on some mid-side EQ to help me along with that, actually. So let's monitor the side signals now, just briefly. That's really good. That's real, because if I just used a high shelf on the whole stereo field, it just would have just been top end, lots of weight in the lows and low mids, and the middle would have felt relatively hollow. So I just boosted the top on the side signals where that sort of airiness was to just sort of wrap around the image. It's not necessarily a key feature of warm sounding masters. It was just that this one called for something to help balance the weight in the low end, so it could still be warm as a general sort of tone, but it didn't feel muffled, and that's really important. You don't want your masters to feel muffled just because you're trying to make it sound warm. And I think I know what algorithm I'm going to use for limiting, and that's going to be the all-round mode here, because this tends to just be a little bit more tighter on the low end. It doesn't allow the low end to extend too far like in transparent mode, at least to my ears. That's how I hear those two different algorithms operating. Let's have another listen. Oh, whoopsies. I realize why. I'm like, that's not very hot. It's like 3.4 decibels below. Driving alone tonight. Driving alone tonight. Driving alone tonight. Driving alone. Okay, beautiful. That's about the ballpark I wanted at. Alright, so now let's play before and after.
Around today, I can't get my feelings straight. On and we play games with each other. On and I guess I can't get enough. Driving alone tonight without one thing on my mind. On and it's not easy for me to say, but I guess I like you anyway. I get around today, I can't get my feelings straight. On and we play games with each other. On and I guess I can't get enough. Driving alone tonight without one thing on my mind. On and it's not easy for me to say, but I guess I like you anyway. I get around today, I can't get my feelings straight. On and we play games.
I think this is hands down the most difficult quality to achieve tastefully in mastering. When I was starting out, my attempts at making masters bright and clear were always met with tiny, harsh and abrasive results. So let's look again to objectively define the subjective and show you how you can achieve a good sounding bright master. Well, what do we know about bright masters? Well, bright is the opposite of warm, so a tilt towards the higher frequencies. That's pretty objective and manageable to understand, but also in addition to that, humans' ears are more sensitive to higher frequencies as per plotted in the Fletcher-Munson curve. So This means when I'm actually looking for a bright master, it's really great when you want to showcase articulation, transients, textures, or naturally present harmonics and tones in a mix. It can just help shift all of that forward to a listener, because that's where our ears are geared towards naturally listening to most. Our hearing is most sensitive to those higher frequencies, those brighter frequencies. We're back with the same mix again, and let's think about how we can make this bright. Now, the guitars are quite heavy and there's a lot of energy in the top end. The low end, I think, is pretty phenomenal, like just sounds really good, but part of the brightness is also our perception and sense of depth there. And microdynamically speaking, there's a lot of weight in the guitar, so they're very sustained, but that means they're also very close to the transient information. Now, no, we're not trying to make a punchy master, we'll be doing that in another version. However, having a little bit of dynamic separation is going to overall make this sound a little bit more brighter, a little bit more open. So what we're going to use is we're going to use a little bit of compression here to start off with, and we're just going to use very slow attack, very slow release, allow those transients to move through, that smack, that definition to come out, so that way when we're EQing, it just gets boosted a little bit more, so it just becomes a little bit more exaggerated. Take a listen to this. This setting is a good starting point. Okay, so that's helping just the dynamics of that information or the mix. Something I'm hearing is, especially when I turn my dial down during listening, is the hi-hats got a nice sizzle in the stereo field, similar to what we did in the warm version. I want to bring out the top end of the stereo field just because it's sort of low-hanging fruit to create a bright master without shifting the tonality too far away from this original mix. So let's have another listen. That's sounding pretty good, actually. I reckon around that 200 hertz-ish. I want to make sure I make this, everything's relative, so if I can pull out a bit of low mids, the top end will feel a bit brighter relative to the amount of energy in the low mids. The reason why I'm saying 200 to 250 is because that snare fundamental's around 170, and if I cut too low, that snare's going to start to feel weak and not punchy, and that's also going to make us lose energy in the track. So what I want to do is, let's go that 250 hertz-ish. Let me loop this whole section.
Today, I can't get my feelings straight. On and we play games.
let's level match this to the original, because I'm sort of liking those changes. That's to the low mids, and this is just to subs, which, and the reason why I'm cutting the subs out isn't because there's anything wrong with the subs, and it's not because I'm trying to buy headroom. I want to make it very clear that I'm cutting out these subs because I want the top end, the very top frequencies to be perceived with greater intensity, because everything's relative. The more subs you have, the less high end you have. The less subs you have, the more high end you have, relative to one another. Not statistically speaking in terms of amplitude, but in terms of relationship to one another. So this soft cut in the lows is going to make that top end feel a little bit more bright, a little bit more open. All right, now let's take a listen to this before and after, before we start driving it.
Around today, I can't give my feelings straight. On and we play games with each other. On and I guess I can't get enough. Driving alone tonight, without one thing on my mind. On and it's not easy.
I'm not liking what this compressor is not working in the favor of making a bright master, because it's just a little, it's just taking too much off everything. I'm just going to tone this back quite a bit, actually, because some of those snare hits are just getting absolutely swallowed. Let's try again. Have another listen.
Around today, I can't give my feelings straight. On and we play games with each other. On and I guess I can't get enough. Driving alone tonight, without one thing on my mind. On and it's not easy.
I like that. That's a really good bass to start from. But one more thing I want to do to the overall tone of this before I start final limiting, and that is I want to use some upward compression to the upper mids. Nowhere else, just the upper mids. So that's going to be about 6K. This can start about 800 hertz. We're just going to monitor this, compress this 800 to 6K really heavily, and then slowly blend it up. Actually, I might make this a little bit higher. 110. Let's go. Let's have another listen. That is pretty damn nice. This upward compression here is bringing all the low level detail, because it's just compressing the hell out of those bands and then blending it back in underneath the signal in parallel. Now all that's left to do is just drive this for a little bit of loudness. And we're not going to have to use the analog gear for this. We're just going to use a good old limiter. So let's get rolling on that. You know what? I'm going to use a little bit of clipping just to help along that overall loudness, just because I want to still push it and drive it a bit, and using limiting only is really killing some of the dynamics there. So let's go, so what are we at? -6, let's go dB, 1 dB of clipping's more than enough. We can go up 6 dB. That should give us a peak of -6, I think. Let's have a look. And then what we need to do is we can bring this back down quite considerably. 4.2, and we're good, I reckon. Let's have a listen to that.
Around today, I can't give my feelings straight. On and we play games with each other. On and I guess I can't get enough. Driving alone tonight, without
Now listen to the warm one and then the bright one.
Around today, I can't get my feelings straight. On and we play games with each other. On and I guess I can't get enough. Driving alone tonight, without one thing on my mind. On and it's not easy for me to say, but I guess I like you anyway.
Is louder better? To the human ear, yes. Yes, it is. If we hear something which is louder, we gravitate more towards it, and it just triggers our oral sensations most. Musically though, this can have both pros and cons when we're mastering. The cons are tracks which call on dynamics and transient nuance won't call to be slammed loud. The instrumentation, tonality and performance sometimes can call on dynamic intricacies to carry the song of a track, like let's say with an acoustic folk song. However, if you've got a high energy track like this one, having a higher RMS and everything up front in your face helps embellish that energy. For the sake of this exercise, the mix in question, it just has that. This mix is high energy. And I was fortunate enough to actually go to one of Leah's shows in North Hollywood when I was visiting the States, and I know that the energy of this song really embellishes when everything is up in your face. The volume of the speakers are blaring and it's just there. So how do you make a master sound loud? First is first, this mix is really balanced. It is a good balance. I don't need to really mess with it far from where it stands to make it loud. Something I do want to do is though increase the overall intensity of the low level information, those sustaining the notes, those harmonics that are naturally occurring there. I don't want to use harmonic saturation necessarily to embellish it, but I do want to just bring out some of that low level information and thicken everything up. So Dyne 1, I use it to help bring out the upper mids, but now I want to use it to bring up everything. So all the low level information, just bring it up. So let's dial this in. We'll get all the compression relatively equal across from each band, and then we'll just blend this in slowly. Let's have a go.
Around today, I can't get my feelings straight. On and we play games with each other. On and I guess I can't get enough. Driving alone tonight, without one thing on my mind. On and it's not easy for me to say, but I guess I like you anyway. I get around today, I can't get my feelings straight. On and we play games with each other. On and I guess I can't get enough. Driving without but I guess I like.
I just didn't like the low end detail coming out too much, so I'm going to attenuate a little bit more. It's just a bit too woolly when I'm driving and squishing up the dynamics. That low end just sort of shades everything. It just sort of blurs everything a little bit. So let's have another listen.
Around today, I can't get my feelings straight. On and we play games with each other. On and I guess I can't get enough.
I like that. I like that a lot. Next, some clipping. I've got a whole video on just making masters loud. If you want to see that, link in the description below. Clipping, pretty simple. We've got a ceiling of 6 dB, and we know roughly we want to just be clipping it maybe 1.5 dB thereabout.
Driving alone tonight. 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 Driving alone tonight.
Cool. I'm enjoying that. Let's have another listen.
Around today, I can't get my feelings straight. On and we play games with each other. On and I guess I can't get enough. Driving alone tonight, without one thing on my mind. On and it's not easy for me to say, but I guess I like you anyway. I get around today, I can't get my feelings straight. On and we play games with each other. On and I guess I can't get enough. Driving alone tonight, without one thing on my mind. On and
Like, the guitars are screaming. I actually like it. I prefer the warm master, and I'll show you why, but let's just have a level matched before and after to the original. That's going to be really important to see and make sure we're not degrading too much of the important details of the mix.
Around today, I can't get my feelings straight. On and we play games with each other. On and I guess I can't get enough. Driving alone tonight, without one thing on my mind. On and it's not easy for me to say, but I guess I like you anyway.
What I feel is that fat snare drum hit, I'm losing a little bit of. Let's just have another listen. Just the transient of that snare, that snare's getting lost a little bit in the upper mids. Let's have a listen here. Okay, now let's have another listen before and after. That's better. There we are. One loud master served up on a platter. Let's bring that back up to volume. Take a listen to this and look at these LUFS numbers.
Around today, I can't get my feelings straight. On and we play games with each other. On and I guess I can't get enough. Driving alone tonight, without one thing on my mind. On and it's not easy for me to say, but I guess I like you anyway.
Fucking beautiful. Nothing feels worse than when you're vibing a mix, it's smacking you, then you go master it, you click AB, and all the energy, all the balls, all the fucking smack in it is gone. Punchiness and dynamics is a term which I like in mastering because it objectively correlates to the musical qualities of a composition, of the arrangement, of performance, of the recording and production. And what does it objectively quantify with? Well, that is rhythm, transient information, and that transient information denotes the thing that moves people when they listen to it in both percussive phrases and beats and melodic lines in a piece of music. So when mastering, having a sympathetic ear to how the pace, rhythm and movement of the music interacts with the listener is a strong tool to craft masters which not only work on a technical level but also interact with the listener strongly. So now I'm going to show you how to make a punchy master. The first thing is this track is quite dense and there's good energy and there's good texture in it. However, in terms of smack, I really want to bring that out. So the first thing I want to do is have a listen to the side signals because there's a bit of frequency masking I know that's happening in the low mids, preventing the smack, the impact down the center from coming out. So let's just have a listen to that side signal and you hear straight away sort of what's going on. Pretty much everything from 400 hertz down is sort of murking the punch, the potential for definition in the center. So I'm just going to bring that down. Okay, so what I've done there is you've got the punch of the snare around 170 hertz, and I'm also boosting the top end in the mid channel where the transient information of that snare is, but I'm also removing that low end, those low end and low mids of the side signal, which is sort of murking the image a little bit. Let's have another listen to this before and after. That's really helping that just smack out a little bit more, especially the snare drum there quite nicely. The second thing I want to do is not use traditional compression like some do and do it to great effect, but there's a particular setting I created on here which has slightly more aggressive attack and release times for each of the bands as opposed to Bob Katz's one, and it just allows me to get, instead of blending in the texture, the weight of the low level information, I end up blending the transient information and adding more into the signal, and it works to great effect. Take a listen to this and you'll just hear the punch come out straight away. Let me just move that. I like that. I actually like what that's doing. Now, the next thing is, when I did the loud mask or the bright mask, I used soft clipping. And soft clipping allows the transfer curve between the waveform and the clip to softly roll off so you don't get as much upper harmonics. Now, with Punch, something that's really cool in mixing is the lo-fi plugin. Andrew Sheps uses the lo-fi plugin in Pro Tools to add harmonics to his kicks and his snares to give him a bit more texture, a little bit more impact, a little bit more smack. I like using harmonic clipping or hard clipping to introduce those harmonics in a very similar fashion, because you can get a really smack punchy master using some hard clipping. Maybe not as much as what we used in the loud version, but just 1 decibel of hard clipping here will really give us a lot of room to work with in terms of making something smack out of the speakers. Take a listen to this. Wait a second, let's just make sure we've got a good peak level. Yep, we can work with that. Okay, now let's go before and after. Today, I can't get my feelings straight. On and we play games with each other. On and I guess I can't get enough. Driving alone tonight, without one thing on my mind. On and it's not easy for me to say, but I guess I like you anyway. I get around today, I can't get my feelings straight. On and we play games with each other. On and I guess fucking smacking beautifully. And then finally some limiting, but with the limiting we're going to use the transparent mode and probably just add about 3 dB again, and we should be in a good pocket for this overall master. Now, let's play each of these masters back to back, and I want to ask you, which is your favorite? Today, I can't get my feelings straight. On and we play games.